Warm welcome to CGTN's roundtable. I'm Wang Mengjie in Beijing. On Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping attended a symposium on private enterprises. After listening to representatives of the old enterprises, and the president urged efforts to promote a healthy and high-quality development of the country's private sector. In our discussion today, we aim to explore the signal the symposium sent and the strong impetus behind China's private enterprises. Before our starting, let me introduce our guests attending today's roundtable. They are Professor Christian Longblad from University of North Carolina and Professor Zhang Zhiruo from Shanghai Jiaotong University. He Ting, CEO of Immuniform Technology Cooperation, and Yang Xin, CEO of Bonnet Asset Management. Thank you so much. So I start with you, Professor Longblad. What signal does the symposium send in your perspective?
What we get is a strong affirmation of the private sector's cornerstone role in China's future economic trajectory. I think this reflects a commitment to ensuring that private enterprise kind of plays a vital role in innovation, employment, global competitiveness. I think it also has the potential to align well with the high quality economic development goals that have been articulated by the leadership. The long-term vision in areas not only in technology, but advanced manufacturing, services, elsewhere. I think all of that is really deeply intertwined with a thriving private sector. Private enterprise, frankly, has the ability to be agile and to take risks and to exhibit a kind of dynamism that is really important in a rather uncertain world like the one that we live in. And so this has the potential to help China sort of achieve the next stage of kind of high quality innovation-led growth. But I think there's some additional components as well that I would want to mention. One is, if this affords some policy clarity, that can add to market confidence. And so this can allow market participants, both domestic but also global, to feel that there's a stable and supportive policy environment for private sector engagement. And I think, any clarity in policy direction that can add to investor confidence. It can enhance some cross-border capital flows. It can ultimately boost growth and some sustainable growth. And so on that point, actually, the last thing I would mention is the potential to have the private sector sort of be the front entry to integrating more closely with the global economy. The world, frankly, is watching China's approach to market development. I'm a Western economist. I have a worldview that the private sector is deeply important to economic growth. And I think very strongly that a vibrant private sector reinforces China's potential to continue to play a role as a global leader in trade, technology, supply chain integration, and the like. And so I think this symposium has the potential to sort of demonstrate China's capacity to adapt in a rapidly shifting economic landscape. So I leave bullish, enthusiastic about this potential for a commitment to the private sector.
As you mentioned, that the world is watching China's economy and private sector. What makes Chinese economy so important?
Well, China is the second largest or perhaps largest economy in the world, depending upon how you measure it, and clearly plays an incredibly important role, both economically and increasingly, politically. And so I think, however, it's incredibly important that China has the capacity and the potential and the roadmap to achieve, I think, its opportunities and its potential. And so what's critical there, what's a linchpin, in my opinion, is a vibrant and dynamic and well-supported private sector to move along with the state role that obviously is present in China. And so I think not only does it matter for China's realizing its potential, it also matters for the globe as well to continue to have an interesting engine for economic growth. And that's good for China and it's good for the world, but the private sector is critical in that endeavor.
Of course, indeed. So back to you, Professor Zhang. How do you think what signal does the symposium send?
In fact, this adjustment period in China also coincides with the global economic downturn. Now, the global international relations are very, very unfriendly compared to the previous decades. I think all of us, all of the people in the world can feel that this unfriendly international environment was the root cause of the overcapacity of the private enterprise, which is the actual reason of the current private economic downturn. But many of the private enterprise have the illusion that this slowdown is due to the government's favor towards state-owned enterprise, or some even think that the government may not develop the private sector next. In 2018, the private enterprise also faced some trouble. At that time, President Xi Jinping held a symposium for them, which gave them confidence and brought them a great improvement. Then I think the symposium of this time also similarly released such a signal. Is to let private enterprise completely rest assured that the government in the next developments of policies will reduce the burden of them, will protect the benefits of them, and will promote the innovation of them. Therefore, I think this symposium released the signal is to let the private enterprise should no worries, roll up sleeves to work harder. 撸起袖子加油干。Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at the symposium, we find that a certain number of representatives from industries related to technology and innovation. So, Mr. He, how important is it to private enterprises, and take your company as example, how does it promote technological innovation at your company?
Thank you. My dream is to pioneer groundbreaking cell and gene therapies that cure humanity's most devastating diseases. For me, science and innovation are not just priorities, they are the very oxygen that sustains our work. When I founded Immunopharm a decade ago, China's cell and gene therapy landscape was still in its infancy. It was the government's visionary policies, from innovation incentives to medical reform, that catalyzed this industry's explosive growth. Seeing this historic opportunity, our team conquered technical barriers through relentless R&D. We've built innovative platforms for gene vector, T-cell engineering, and GMP manufacturing. Our CAR T-cell therapy is now demonstrating unprecedented clinical efficacy against aggressive cancers. For example, we achieved more than 70% of objective response rate in late-stage lymphoma and more than 50% objective response rate in metastatic colon cancer. And we are continually rewriting treatment benchmarks in other ongoing trials as well. Our story mirrors thousands of Chinese tech entrepreneurs in the private sector. Innovators transforming policy momentum into tangible medical breakthroughs. Monday's symposium is not only recognition of past perseverance, it is also a signal to double down on our quest to invest in tech and innovation. When scientific ambition meets national support, more and more lethal diseases could become curable. Thank you.
So, Mr. He, you and your company is a working definition of the private sector in China, do you? Okay, thank you so much. And President Xi has reiterated China's commitment to boosting the private sector through concrete efforts to implement supportive measures and policies. So, as a private entrepreneur yourself, Mr. Yang, what supportive measures your company have received so far, and how do you think these private enterprises could grasp these policies and opportunities well?
Oh, thank you. First of all, we received the tax cut over the last 3 years, and the matter was pretty big. I think it's over 10% of the income. So we were able to invest a lot of money in the talent development. And for a company, I think the surplus in cash is very important to sustain. So the policy of tax cut really gave us a big room to grow the talent we have and to grow the potential talent. And that is very important for the changing area, changing time. So we can prepare ourselves very well for next coming. Secondly, I just applied a loan, a personal loan actually, but that was based on my on that was based on I was the owner of the company, and the loan was approved. I think within 48 hours. So I think this kind of financing channel is really important. Also, the loan rate was within 3% with annual payment. So the robust channel that we can apply now from the bank, that is clearly we can see a change. I think for my company, we how we understand the policy well is we should stand on the bigger picture of how our nation is growing, our economy is growing at such a big scale, so that we can leverage all the policy to create to develop our service to the needs of the market.
Do you see any challenges or difficulties when you're implementing the policies or measures based on your own experience?
Yeah, at the first, I think there are some misunderstanding or some, I wouldn't say misunderstanding, but the understanding channel or the angle is different from company and the policymakers. So the communication is so important that we finally line ourselves up with the supervisions so that we could apply the policy very well quickly. And it was very efficient recently. We could feel that the communication with the government is better.
Right, so thank you. And do you agree with that, Professor Lomblad?
Yeah, I mean, I think some policy clarity for sure, but then at like a high level, to the extent that that gives an impetus to, innovation and growth, and particularly productivity, right? So it's not just that we're growing, but it's that we're growing in a way that enhances our productivity. I think that is sort of fundamental. I mean, many of China's most groundbreaking advancements, whether it's in AI or electronic vehicles, or we just heard about biotech or in asset management. I mean, these have emerged from the private sector, and these enterprises have the potential to drive efficiency gains. So I think that this is what we want to lean into. I think globally, and I think it's really important for China to do the same.
Right, thank you. So when we come to challenges and opportunities, I think the obstacles like the trade barrier or the financing difficulties will also urge to dismantle during the symposium. So Mr. He, what other measures will benefit your companies the most?
Oh, well, that means a lot. Bringing a novel drug from lab to market is a decade-long marathon requiring over $1 billion investment with merely a 10% success probability for most cases. For biotechs like us, sustained capital access is very important. Our recent milestones prove viability. We are nearing approval for what could be China's first domestically developed CAR-T therapy to treat late-stage lymphoma, while advancing another candidate that's entering global pivotal trials this year as a potential first-in-class treatment for colorectal cancer. Despite these major progress, my last series of funding is the most difficult one in the past decade. Today's frosty financing climate, especially in in medical technology threatens such frontier innovations. Over 60% of Chinese biotech IPOs have been delayed since 2022, while venture fundings hit a 5-year low. The symposium focus on dismantling these barriers couldn't be timed better. Every quarter of financing drought pushes game-changing cures further from patients.
As you mentioned, your most difficulties and choices during your whole career. So, would you please tell me more about your details about your story?
I founded this company 10 years ago after my graduation from Tsinghua University with a PhD major in cancer biology. Back to then, the major treatment for cancer is as for small molecule and for antibody drugs, uh, while cell and gene therapy are emerging as a very promising new way to treat cancer more efficiently than ever. So I started this company with two of my other colleagues, and with no with every money we put into the R&D is from the private equity. We raised more than 10 series of financing during these years to support us to develop all these new technology platform to from design to manufacture of this CAR T product to treat cancer. Uh, we are in the while we are developing this cutting edge technology, we in every day our cash flow is very important for us because we know we are going to invest for a long time and a lot of money, but we can only create our income after our first successful product launched into the market. That takes a yeah that takes 10 that takes 10 years for us.
Thank you, Mr. He. So, Mr. Yang, what other measures will benefit your enterprises the most in your perspective?
I think the trade barrier solving is one of the things we're focusing on because we will benefit from the globalization. And because I'm working in the capital markets, the capital inflow and outflow is very essential. And we invest a lot in a lot of opportunities like M&A. So the trade barrier really is a big problem we see that stops the inflow and outflow. The communication is not only stopped in the business wise, but also the capital wise. We see the foreign investment in Beijing and Shanghai was dropping dramatically over the last 2 years. So if there is a talk and there is progress in smoothing the trade barrier activity, that will dramatically increase our opportunity in our business.
Professor Longblad, do you see any, how do you see China's government supportive measures? How do they help the private sectors in China? How do you evaluate?
Yeah, I mean, so I think you've heard a couple of ones right now. Maybe the most central is, the access to capital and making sure that ideas can then find the resources needed to come to realization, and that's like central. Why is that exciting? Because not only does that push forward in interesting ways, but we heard that that's employing 300 people with really rewarding and interesting jobs, right? And a big chunk of the urban workforce is attached to the private sector, and maybe there's opportunities to even have that deepen more in the rural sector, right? And so I think that's exciting. What else? A light regulatory touch, an ability to have kind of an even playing field with other competitors, and then the extent to which, continued progress can be made on, cross-border capital flows and everything. I think all the things that we heard are pretty good examples of the machinery that needs to be in place to move the private sector forward, to have the freedom and the confidence to make the investments that I think can fundamentally move the nation forward in terms of economic development.
During the symposium, President Xi called for a healthy and high-quality development of the country's private sector. So how does a vibrant private sector contribute to China's economic development in your perspective? Professor Zhang.
As we all know, before the reforms and the opening up in 1978, China's private economy, as we all know, was zero. However, along with the development of the reforms and the opening up, the private economy experienced rapid growth. This development has gained the consistent support of the China's top leaders from Deng Xiaoping to Xi Jinping over the past 40 years. The government has issued various policies to safeguard the private economy, and there are even clauses in constitution to protect them. And now the law on the promotion of the private economy is just under introduction. The private economy has been growing stronger and has never weakened. Currently, over 6% of China's GDP, over 70% of innovation, over 80% of employment, and over 95% of the number of enterprise are from private sector. This indicates that more than half of the key indicators of the national economy are based on the private sector. State-owned enterprise in China have their advantage, and the private enterprise have their strengths. Private enterprise have the character of quick startup, strong innovation ability, and a high capacity for employment absorption. Among China's new four great inventions, except the high-speed rail, the other three products, the online shopping, sharing bag, and mobile payment, were all innovated by the private enterprise.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zhang. I think there were two key words in your speech, like law protection and strong innovation, in speaking about the vibrant private sector. So how do you think about this question, Professor Lamblad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite central, frankly, and you heard already about the incredibly sizable role that the private sector plays in the Chinese economy. But it's not only its size. I think that's quite important, but it's also its potential to drive innovation, to drive productivity, as I said before. I mean, from 78 up until the present, the increasing role for the private sector has allowed China to transform in such a fundamental way. But the next step, not from low income to middle income, but from middle income to high income, the next step is about productivity. I mean, that's it. And these enterprises have the potential to really drive that in some incredibly fundamental ways. And so I'm very excited about that. And I also think it is incredibly important. And so leaning into the private sector's capacity to help China realize that component of its opportunity set, I think, is incredibly important.
Right, thank you indeed. So how do you guys evaluate the prospect of China's private sector? What kind of new opportunities lay ahead? Mr. He?
To be honest, I have very high expectations for China's private sector. Not only because I'm in the private sector, but also for years, China's biotech and innovative drug development are mainly driven by private sector, uh, because there are very high risk of developing innovative drugs to treat major diseases. I do believe our this area in China is because China has the very strong needs for almost every diseases. We are the largest. We have the largest tumor population in the world, and also for Alzheimer and many other major diseases as well. So there is a very strong needs are driven us to pursue for better and more cost-effective ways of treatment. Uh, and also, there are many more and more talents in biology, and in medicine, that could facilitate us to build these platform research team very quickly. Like us, we built this platform for 10 years, but at the first 5 years, actually, we have already uh, uh, done a lot of world-leading work in building these gene vector and cell engineering technologies. Uh, and for immunopharm, we do find that for solid tumors, there are great opportunities of many hard tech breakthroughs could be forecasted in the probably 10 years or even 5 years. Uh, I don't think that that's going to be a very long journey for us, um, because the technology in this field um, is accelerating, is different every day. And But for now, there are only like leukemia and lymphoma. These hematological cancers could be effectively treated across with these innovative CAR T cell therapies from US. Not only one CAR T therapy to treat solid tumor has been approved yet, but we believe there could be a very high chance that the first solid tumor, uh, uh, the first highly effective solid tumor treatment, cell therapy, could be developed in China and within 5 years. And also, last year we found autoimmune diseases could also be could be cured, not only treated, be cured by some kind of new technology from CAR T. We have multiple autoimmune diseases trials ongoing to treat, like systemic lupus erythematosus and other as well. I think these are the future of us and the future for many other biotech in private sector in China. And I think that is going to be continuously developing.
Of course, indeed. As you mentioned, you have a strong confidence towards China's economic development in the coming future. So, where does this confidence come from?
The first of all is the needs, probably one of the most strong medical needs in the world. We have such strong population and more and more elder people as well. The second of all is we have already built a very solid uh, um, basic infrastructures for medical and biology. We have these talents and a lot of policy incentives are made uh, um, to facilitate all this research and development. It's not for the past 2 years. I don't think it's very easy because of the financing and many other aspects. But in the long run, I do believe from these because we have these needs and talents and infrastructure. I think in the long run, we do have a better opportunity. But it is still very challenging.
Right, needs and infrastructure. Thank you so much, Mr. He. So, Mr. Yang, how do you evaluate the prospect of China's private sector?
The private sector has been contributing for jobs and the manufacturing innovation for a very long time. I think it is a very important part of economic development, according to various research and policy analysis. Like we can hear the news every couple of years that some private company uh, develop a certain technology that outruns the national labs. I think that is might not be a common case, but that illustrates the private sector can develop the innovation that surprises the science world. Um, so what I can see in person is the private sector always take the highest risk in business development, and that is pushing the boundaries of the industry whenever they can success. So when they success, they push the boundaries and provide the better goods, better service and product to the market, and they make the fortune. And then they are more willingly to invest the fortune they made in high risk business development. So I think that is a really good circle that pushes our economic development. Um, that's what I think the private sector is why the private sector is so important.
As a private entrepreneur yourself, what new opportunities lay ahead in your perspective?
Because my company is also a relatively young company. We built the company like 10 years ago as well. So we are not we are not in prior advance in various ways. But when the time is changing, when the business environment is changing, and if we can prepare ourselves, if we can prepare ourselves very well through talent development, I think we can seize certain opportunities in the changing of the market, in the changing of the environment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yang. I think the two gentlemen are very confident towards China's economic development in the future. So, Professor Longblad, what's your prospect?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious places for the private sector to thrive, clearly technology. I mean, that's obvious, right? So whether that's artificial intelligence or biotech or digital commerce, fintech, I mean, a whole host of things. I think there's a tremendous amount of potential there, and so in some way, letting the private sector have the freedom and the support and the resources to thrive in that setting is incredibly important. But I guess I would also maybe make one additional point, and we heard it a little bit in one of the earlier comments, which is the private sector has the capacity to solve some big problems too, right? Like we've got some big problems, whether it's healthcare and immuno issues and other things that are there, or environmental challenges and the capacity to really harness the private sector to do some things in the green space. I mean, that's not a China problem, that's not a US problem, that's a global problem, and the private sector has its role to play there. So I think really supporting the private sector's capacity to grow, that's good for China anyway. It creates, as I said, innovation-led growth, and it creates opportunities for good, well-paying, meaningful jobs. But in addition to that, it's not an either or. There's also the capacity to tackle some of our biggest problems, and I'm enthusiastic about the private sector's capacity to do exactly that.
Yeah, I've learned from the two gentlemen's experiences as a private entrepreneur in China. I think it's kind of like experience we can learn. Do you think China's experience could also be borrowed by the world?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I think China is ahead of much of the emerging world in terms of driving growth and accelerating at a pace that is almost like unprecedented in human history. I mean, that sort of 1978 up until the present trajectory that we heard about earlier is really quite stunning. But China is now navigating the next step, and the capacity to move into really innovation-led growth. And as China navigates that, other emerging economies that are behind can learn some important lessons about how exactly not to get stuck. I think that's an important thing that China can perhaps lead as an exemplar.
Right, thank you. So, Professor Zhang, what's your prospect?
I think every economic adjustment period presents great opportunities. And I think the adjustment period of this time in the world is particularly special because it is accompanied by a great deal of scientific and technological innovation. Therefore, the improvement of global international relations in the future will surely be the best choice. Um, yeah, be the best choice of the human wisdom. And after that, there must be a period of rapid global economic growth. So, private enterprise that have real innovation or provide real and long-term service will definitely catch the opportunities and will surely have a promising future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang, and thank you so much, our guests, sharing your insights into further detail the development of China's private sector. Thank you for watching CGTN's Roundtable. I'm Wang Mengjie in Beijing. Stay tuned.